Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Clean Air Task Force, I would like to welcome you to the Zero Carbon Future Pavilion. My name is Steve Brick, and I'm a member of the senior leadership team at Clean Air Task Force. I just wanted to take this opportunity to make one announcement, and that is that if you see the QR code over towards the right, that can take you to a website that will provide a simultaneous translation of this event. And there are quite a number of languages available, including English, if you would like to choose English. So that QR code will take you to the relevant website. And then more importantly, I wanted to express our thanks from Clean Air Task Force to Joe Curtin and his team at the Rockefeller Foundation for the generous support that they provided to us for our work here. We are so delighted to be able to co-host and host the Rockefeller events in our pavilion, and we're delighted to be here, delighted that you are all here. Joe, thank you so much. I will now turn the mic over and the program over to you.
This mayor, no. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm gonna pass over to Mauro.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for making the effort. It's too bad you have that voice today, because you would have been great to introduce this work that we have been doing, because it was originally your idea to get it started. And from the beginning, we had a lot of synergy. So this is a very interesting work that we're doing to address the gaps to bankability by first identifying what are the factors, right, and making something that is expected to be useful for decision makers, for development partners, for MDBs, for country governments to move the needle in renewable energy, transmission, and battery storage, everything that comes around clean energy transition in the global south. So there are lots of challenges, and we're trying to identify where those challenges are and bring some priorities. So it's really interesting work that we just started. We need to thank the Rockefeller Foundation for the support of a grant to our organization, and for inviting us to be here today as well, and the GIAP for the collaboration that has been given along this year. So with now, I just welcome everybody, and thank you for your time today and attention, and we'll just get started. So we can run the presentation. Oh yeah, sure, I have it here, sorry. So just quick, the agenda is we'll do a short presentation, then we'll run a panel discussion with our guests here, whom I also thank very warmly for committing to come with us today. So, okay. So the presentation starts with a project vision and objectives, then goes to a description of the tool that we developed, some country analysis data, and finally a wrap up with main challenges that we have observed and that we need to tackle next year as we implement this tool. So the vision of this, as I mentioned, is to create a tool that is useful to set priorities within all the efforts of development partners to create the bankability, right? And it should be used, as I mentioned, by MDBs, philanthropies, and the governments themselves. The objectives are to identify tools, in the tool, the variables and dimensions that define if a country is bankable or not at the country level, not specifically at the project level, but there are other initiatives that are more focused on the project level bankability, with lots of more technical issues around the project, but we are focusing at the country level. And then we need to diagnose with this tool, right? What are the variables, where are the areas that are least prepared, right? for bankability and the need more attention so that we can prioritize action, right, and be useful. So we identify what we call the hotspots for intervention, which are identified based on the values of the variables. So Florencia, who is our global head of research at RELP, is here today to present. She's been leading the technical work on this project, so she will present the tool and the findings. So Flor, please come on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to start my intervention saying thank you to Joe and his team, to GIAP for you all for being here, and the incredible team that is in Argentina that was part of this, and they deserve the recognition. So I will start to introduce you on the research process that we conducted to create this tool. Considering all the political, regulatory, economic, financial, and technical barriers that affect bankability of clean power projects in developing and emerging economies, including on-grid, off-grid renewables, transmission lines, and BES, we identified the main indicators that serve to explain the bankability of those projects. We then categorized them into dimensions and variables and assessed them also at the country level to get what we call the global bankability score. This tool allows us to identify the intervention hotspots that will be later explained to find pathways and roadmaps to bankability. This tool didn't start from scratch, but for existing frameworks, so it's important to know that this tool is complementary to the existing ones. Continue with the selection of the indicators, the calibration of them per relevance, correlation, and also the prioritization of all the variables identified to finally get the global score for bankability. So among the existing frameworks that we consider for the analysis are the Africa Development Bank Power Sector Reform and Performance Index, BNF Climate Scope, the Energy Transition Index, the RISE, JERI, RICAI, SRMI, and from all of them, we assess the relevance of each of the indicators identified by them to then complete that list with some new indicators, especially refer to the contractual scheme and the power sector readiness. So to date, the tool has 95 indicators that are grouped into 39 dimensions and 9 variables, including the political and economic readiness, the legal framework readiness and enforcement, the infrastructure readiness, the renewable energy potential, the power sector readiness, the policy readiness, the regulatory readiness, the institutional and contractual readiness. So the calibration process was a pretty relevant step in the research work that was made into variables and indicators. For variables, we identify the priority to be addressed in order to improve bankability, and were also calibrated by the number of indicators per variable. And for indicators, we score them according to a quantitative criteria, their relevance and correlation, because we are not only considering renewable energy projects, but also BES and transmission lines. So the sum of the values of all indicators resulted in the global bankability score. Here is a sample of one of the analyses that are able to be made for different countries and different type of projects for a single year. So this tool allows for different uses, for example, single year, single country, single project type, single year, single country, multiple project types, multiple years, single country, single project type, etc. So there is a diverse set of analyses that can be made with this tool. Relating to the users, the tool is created to guide philanthropy, in particular, to guide philanthropies, DFIs and MDBs, to guide their investment towards the most critical areas relevant for improving the bankability of clean power projects in emerging and developing economies. So 3 levels of analysis are able to be made. The first one is at a country and regional level, facilitating the comparison between countries and regions and assessing progress over time. At variables level, the tool allows for the identification of both the most and least prepared areas of a particular country and the progress made on each of them over time. And the third level, it's at indicator level that provides specific information about the aspects per variable to be potentially enhanced, enable a better effort allocation. So at country level, we can conduct this kind of analysis for different type of projects and different countries and a single year. Then at variable level, we can select different, I think that these have a pointer? Yes. Different variables, but you don't see it, so I will not use it. Different variables for different countries and different years to track the progress over the different variables over time. Also, at the variables level, we identified what we call the intervention need hotspots, that are those variables that are potentially addressed by DFIs, MDBs, and philanthropies at a reasonable time and cost. So what we call the priority zone includes all those variables that have a score below 50 and are within these 6 variables. All the bottom, at the bottom of the graph, you may see the 9 variables identified, sorted by their priority to be addressed by MDBs, DFIs, and philanthropies. And the reason why the legal framework readiness and enforcement and the political and economic readiness are outside that priority zone is because they are a little, in some way, out of the scope of those organizations. And of course, their improvement takes more time and are more costly. And of course, the renewable energy potential is outside the priority zone because it can be modified. So here we can have some samples of the global bankability. Okay. Of the global bankability score. For example, in this case, we have the least bankable countries for 2022 that include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Malawi, Nigeria, and Ethiopia, the 9 variables for them, and the different scores for each of them. This is for BES. It's another type of project assessed by this tool. And the important message to communicate here is that the variables that are in some way out of the scope of MDBs, philanthropies, and DFIs have almost all of them a very good score. So even in very difficult countries, it's possible to develop clean power projects. Finally, at indicators level, we can also assess the individual score for each of them. To date, I don't know why the map, okay, behind this is a map, imagine it.
It's like out of color, but we can see it anyway.
Okay, because I don't see nothing. To date, 15 countries have been analyzed from preliminary data. With that, I mean secondary sources. So we have to conduct a data gathering from primary sources, validate the information with country experts. Just for you to know that, it's very important that all the scores have been got from preliminary data. The country selection criteria include the level of renewable energy integration, the access to data, and also the factor that some of them are priority countries for GEAP. So here we have the 15 countries according sort by they score for different type of projects. With Brazil, South Africa, the Philippines, India, and Argentina among the most bankable countries, and Vietnam, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Malawi, and Democratic Republic of Congo among the least bankable countries. And now I ask Mauro to come over here again.
Okay. Thank you, Flor. We'll probably, yeah, you can, sorry, I can use this one. So thank you for the presentation. We'll share these slides, so for those interested, and this will be also published, we'll share a QR where you can download the presentation. Just to summarize and wrap up before we go into the panel discussion, I'd like to highlight some of the main challenges that we have encountered here, which are basically around the availability of reliable data, and that's kind of a commonplace for most of these assessments that we are going. Some countries have lots of information and lots of data available, but they don't need to be assessed for bankability because they're bankable, right? So it's kind of the chicken and the egg. So it's very, very challenging to find that information, to get reliable and comparable sources. So we are expecting to use secondary and primary sources, being primary sources like on the ground assessment by country experts. And so that's something that's very important going forward, to have that network and to also leverage on other development partners' networks so that we don't duplicate efforts, because there's a lot of that as well. We're very conscious of that, and we want to optimize the use of the limited funding that all of our organizations have for this. And then the other thing is that there are certain pieces of information, like availability of data around infrastructure, the status of infrastructure, or the plans around improving regulation, et cetera, that are even harder to get, right? So all of this, of course, the value of these tools depends, of course, on the quality of the input data. So a lot of effort has to be put there. So the tool this tool will be made available under a web-based format, and it will be publicly available, so it will be free of charge to be used. This is being developed as a common good, so nobody's holding any intellectual rights here, so it will be fully available for consultation. The ambition is to cover all the emerging and developing economies. we'll hope, and we'll update it every 2 years. So during 2024, the idea is to complete the first data set as big as possible for as many countries as possible, and then update that information every 2 years. With that, I wrap up the presentation. Thank you, and let me check the time. We're okay. We're going to entertain some interesting discussion here with our panel, and then we can take some Q&A in the end. Okay? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
So-
if I can jump in
Yeah.
with a few comments. I mean, Sebastian here, the CEO of RELP. Thank you very much, and thank you, Joe, for putting this together. I think it's a fantastic thing to have. It's a fantastic tool. If I can make a comment on the government perspective, I was on the Minister for Energy of Argentina some years ago. And I can tell you that this is something that is extremely useful to have, and is something that I would have loved to have when we've been government and we didn't have. So when we took office as an experience, it's really complex to deal with these kind of things that we knew. A lot of we had the feeling of what happened around, but we didn't have a tool. We didn't have something qualified and quantified with the variables and everything as this tool is offering. So it would have been really interesting to have something structured in the way it is proposed as the vision from the Rockefeller colleagues had to implement. So my vision with this is that once this instrument will be set up, it will be extremely useful for officers in different governments around the Global South, not only for them to have a clear, quantified, for them to have the quantified things on the variables that are behind this, but also for the different actors that are, of course, target of this instrument, like the philanthropy and different organizations that want to act in the Global South, for them to have a lot of interesting things around the information, for them to have the right actions in place once they have the opportunity to go to the different markets. So I celebrate that this is going on. I celebrate that this is happening. And I thank you, everyone, for making this possible. Thank you really very much.
Okay, well, thank you, Sebas, for your words. I'd like to introduce our other two guests that have kindly accepted to be here today. Nicole Iseppi, she's Director of Innovation at the Bezos Earth Fund, and very involved and very responsible for all the progress being done at the GIAP. So we thank her a lot for being here today. And Martin Nagell, he's Managing Director for M&A at Masdar. And so with that, I think we have a very interesting panel here to show or express the different opinions from different perspectives, right? From the perspective of a development partner, of a philanthropy that is very much committed with this industry, with this subsector of helping renewables, especially clean electricity in all its forms in the Global South. And a very successful developer and investor, right, in clean energy in Africa, Asia, and in the Global South in general. So I think with that and Sebastian's view from a government perspective, I think we have like three distinct positions here. So with that, I would like to kind of kick off the panel. So if you allow me, I will bring another chair here and I will sit down and we chat. So don't feel like I'm there isolated from you. So first, ladies first. In our culture, ladies goes first. So Nicole, I would like to ask you, what is your view from your perspective of this kind of tools and how you think that this can be applied to kind of bring forward your work at GIAP and the other initiatives that you manage?
Certainly. So good morning, everyone. And as noted, I wear a few hats today, and especially on this panel. So I am with the Bezos Earth Fund. I'm the Global Director for all our worldwide energy initiatives, but I'm very proud to be on the Executive Committee of GAP, Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. And I thank very much Joe from Rockefeller, who's also the core anchor partner with Bezos and also IKEA at GAP. Firstly, if I may just thank Sebastian and his team for their leadership. This is something that is not in the market. And without Sebastian and also with the Rockefeller and Joe's support and GAP's support, this wouldn't be here today, and it's needed. It definitely is an enormous gap in the market, a gap that the governments need, but also industry needs to accelerate the energy transition. And so at the core of it is really about data. And at the Bezos Earth Fund, including GAP, we're very focused on getting the data out to all the stakeholders. But it's not just getting data, it's making sure it's authentic data. It's science-backed, it's corrected, and it's open source. We've got to make it more an equal equilibrium, that more stakeholders, particularly government, have access to not just only data, but the right data to make the important decisions they need for their projects, for their countries, and for further developing their execution of the energy transition. So the fact that it's data, it's actually proof-backed data, but also it's open source. There's nothing out there like that. And this sort of adds to, particularly for the governments, their ability to increase their capacity to be able to actually execute their net zero and also their energy transition plans. Government or private sector, it doesn't matter who you are. You can come out with ambition, but you have to know how to execute it. And without tools like this that Sebastian and his team is supporting, and also GAP and also Rockefeller, they can't actually accelerate that execution. So this is actually targeting an enormous gap in the market, and we're very proud to be associated and really support it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Martin, what's your take here?
Thank you, Mauro. So, from the perspective of Masdar, we have been around since 2006. We were founded by the current COP president, Excellency Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, who was our CEO during the very, very important initiation of Masdar. And an early objective of Masdar has been to develop projects in less mature markets. And the strategy that was followed early on, I was the head of strategy of Masdar, that was my first position, was to invest in mature markets, obtain the learnings on bankability in those markets, and transfer the learnings to less mature markets, and then working with government-to-government basis to create bankable conditions. And we have been quite successful in doing that. We have the first thing we did was the UAE program in Abu Dhabi, the solar programs. We have since then expanded this effort quite significantly. We're currently in Iraq. I saw you had Uganda on the map. We have an MOU signed with Uganda. We developed a large program in Uzbekistan. So. And the common thing for all of these programs is that we have started on a bilateral basis. There's been a government-to-government anchoring of a project, and we have then worked very pragmatically with the government to create bankable conditions. And I think, and the experience is that this takes a lot of time. So you need to have sometimes parliamentary approval for changes in law. You need to create new institutions. You need to have clarity on which part of the government is allowed to approve what consent, and there has to be some coordinating body. And for that reason, these first projects usually takes us years to realize. But once they have been realized, we see that the learnings is transferred to the country where the project is in, and it usually transforms into a PPP program, which we have seen in Uzbekistan, where the first two projects, which were awarded on a bilateral basis, actually resulted in a PPP program, where Masdar had to compete for projects, and we ended up winning them at very, very competitive prices to the Uzbek government. So I think there's a lot of value in such a tool, because it can, like you mentioned, shorten the development time for these projects by creating, transparency on what are the bankable criteria. How should the electricity sector be structured in order to create these bankable conditions? So I think this is a great initiative, and I look forward to seeing the end result of it.
Well, thank you, Martin. I think the anticipating with data all that effort that is being done in different countries, like sometimes in isolation, right? Efforts in isolation, one country from the other, having like a common place, a common methodology to assess and to identify the hotspots. We think that that's valuable, and we're happy to hear that is something you share as value added.
Let me.
Sorry, Nicole, you want to say
And
something?
I think
Sorry.
too, it's learning from each other too, because if you can learn from each other, you can also accelerate that progress. And you know, it doesn't matter if you're just governments or your private sector, different levels of maturity, and therefore you can all equalize that and accelerate that if you all have the same data and you're learning from that too. Can I just add something? It might be very
Sure.
interesting for the audience, is that yesterday I was in a meeting and it was actually hosted by the COP28 president, Dr. Sultan, and the head of IEA, Dr. Fauti, and we had 20 heads of states. We had most of the multilaterals there, and we had the pleasure for GAP as well as the Bezos Earth Fund and Rockefeller Foundation to have a seat in that meeting. And in that meeting, there was a very strong message. It's not the time for small steps, it's the time for big leaps. And tools like this can actually be very integral to make those big leaps. And that's why Sebastian and his team, through GAP and Rockefeller Foundation, it really is something that is very vital to get those big leaps. And I think the time now is perfect, and offering this to the heads of states and governments who are here too at COP and post-COP, it's a wonderful way to really sort of accelerate that transition.
Excellent. Yeah.
No, just
We'll
wanna,
take it on.
just jump into to add perhaps a comment I heard. I don't know if you can listen to me or is this working? Okay, thank you. I heard the other day someone saying that what the Global South needs is capacity building. And I tell you, it's not capacity building, or perhaps it's not only capacity building what the Global South needs. We need tools, we need instruments, we need real stuff. It's not that the officers don't know what to do. There's simply sometimes, sorry, I'm like you, Joe, sorry for that. It's terrible. I hope not, but I hope not.
That cannot happen.
So at the end, I mean, from my experience working in complex markets for a long time, it's not that you don't know how to do the things. Sometimes it's simply that you don't have the tools, you don't have the way, you don't have the instruments, you don't have the real possibility of changing things if someone else is not, if the entire community is not really supporting for this to happen. So it's not, and I would say it's not only capacity building. These kind of things are super helpful. And again, I wish I had this before when I took office, and I didn't have it. So, again, to celebrate it.
Well, thank you. I think we heard three very complementary views, and it all leads in one direction. The more of this has to be done. And also, we have very top of mind coordinating among all the other stakeholders in the space and all the other organizations. And we have been working with all of them over this year, but there's a lot more work to be done. So that's part of the effort, and we'll also get back to you to help us with that, engaging, right, that collaboration at a higher level to sort of bring this tool to be something really big, to bring that data and bring that tool, that method, and those elements that are missing there, and also complement with other initiatives that our partner, we're already talking to some of our partners about capacity building, which is something really, really important and goes hand in hand with this effort. We as an organization, as RELP, we support governments directly. So we're suffering from that lack of resources at the governments, where it's really hard to get the government to work to build a long-term and lasting team that can absorb the knowledge. And this way of doing things that we have had up to now, which is to hire consultants that come and go all the time, is kind of a no-go, right, anymore. We don't feel that is what needs to be continued, right? We need to reshape that and build the capacities at the local level so that the energy transition can happen regardless of the support because there are too many countries, and I think the philanthropic community and the development partners cannot be there forever babysitting for everything just because it doesn't stick and it doesn't stay long term. So that is also part of our objective here, to build that bankability from the ground up and intervening in the right spots with the right kind of resources, and by bringing in the support in a different manner. So I think that will be very useful going forward. Sebas, you wanted to say something?
No, please,
okay.
please.
So,
I think it's pretty much done.
yeah. So I think that we need to understand the markets have different stages of development, and at the beginning, there are several ways of doing things and getting to the same result. Sharing data is one, developing projects and making them bankable one-on-one is okay, but for the kind of action that is needed going forward, we need to really do something different, right? This this programmatics approach, this massive data collection and availability and learning is something that is needed. So. Flora, I don't know if you want to add something. I saw your face. I pass you the mic.
No, I just like to note that it's not possible to address all the issues affecting bankability in developing and emerging economies, but it's not impossible at all to fix some of the main barriers, especially through effective contractual schemes, competitive bidding schemes, and transparent procurement programs. So the important thing we have already survived from the Argentinian experience, which is a very difficult country, having fixed some of the things with proper design PPAs and guarantee schemes, transparent procurement programs, and a very sound regulation. So it's not impossible just for being a part of the Global South to develop long-term infrastructure projects.
Just a last mention, perhaps, for those you don't know. We ran a massive program in Argentina that could attract over $8 billion in capital from the international capital market into wind and solar in a couple of years. And we had implemented this, but without the tool. I mean, we had the feeling of what was needed and all the barriers and all the things around the real needs that the country faces at that time, and we have implemented this. And by implementing and by tackling the right things in the right manner, boom, you can really unlock a lot of capital, even in very complex investment, even to complex investment places as Argentina is. So imagine what the power we have in our hands if we can really deploy this everywhere in the South and even everywhere in the world.
Yes.
To really deploy capital massively everywhere.
And just to add to that, I mean, we are very excited about the tool that you have developed, because it actually addresses the two core obstacles that we have to getting projects on the ground, which is the termination risk and the liquidity risk, which is characteristic everywhere. So you have actually developed something which is which can be extremely catalytic, and it's much faster than actually electricity market reform, which is the most sustainable one, because you don't necessarily need the same amount of guarantee support if you have a well-functioning electricity market. But it takes years, and it's a very politically challenging process. You know, if you want to unbundle your local utility into distribution, transmission, and generation, that requires a change in law. You have to, you know, so and if you don't want to have cost recovery on top of that in all these three elements, that's a hugely political challenging problem question to address in a lot of these countries. So you have provided a quick fix for that, and I think we are extremely excited to work with you also now in Senegal, where we are looking to test
Yeah,
this?
thank you, Martin. And I tell you something. Politically speaking, the window of opportunity is completely uncertain. The size of that window, when a person has the power, goes to the government, you don't know how long are you going to be there. Because the term might be 4 years, but you know how politics move. So once the window of opportunity is really open, you really need to have this already done. You don't have time for building things without resources in places where, of course, the resources are not abundant. So imagine the importance of having tools, procedures, instruments already there by the time the window is open, because it will close at a certain point, and it's completely uncertain, that window. So if you don't move fast, as soon as you have that window open, you may lose that opportunity. And years and years and years after, perhaps the window will come again, and you don't know when. So the message is, we need this. We need these kind of things ready to be deployed everywhere as soon as possible.
Yeah, and socializing the learnings also speeds up the pace of implementation, and organizing those learnings into a tool, and addressing those areas where there's more to be done more effectively, and that's what what this tool is trying to really highlight. Those areas where there are sometimes quick fixes and sometimes real more longer term issues, but that can be fixed. I mean, I always like to say that the approach should be to try to do the energy transition, try to push for renewables investment, whatever, in markets that are complicated. Nobody has the power to fix a whole market, but we can concentrate in one piece of the market and fix it and make it work. And that will be also an example of how things can get done for other sectors. And hopefully things will fix, but we don't have to be paralyzed by that lack of the right environment, but we need to know what to fix. And this is what we're trying to grasp in this tool. Okay.
I think we are.
I think if there are no other comments, we can open, we can open for a few minutes to some Q&A.
Write it down. You can
yeah.
send me by WhatsApp.
So I will offer a mic. Okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah, hi. Thanks for the panel. I was a little late.
If you introduce yourself so that we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Mira. I'm from Duke University. I'm a part of Ringo, and I'm here just learning. I'm doing my master's in environmental management at Duke with a concentration energy. And I'm originally from India, so I'm really interested in a tool like this because my country is on the map here. And so great to know that this tool exists out there. I had two questions primarily. One is, how does this tool, I mean, forgive me if it's already been spoken about, I came a little late, but how does this tool speak about risk for investors that want to, that are looking for these emerging markets? Do they get sometimes a little scared given the bankability score, or are they just supposed to be driven by their impact mission? That's one question. And the second is, I also wonder if there's a way the tool can incorporate impact measurement also, because a lot of investors that care about impact, it's great to see that, okay, this country has a low bankability score, but if the impact is huge, it's an added incentive. So these are my two questions.
Thank you. About your first question, the good thing about the tool is that includes not only the risks, but also the de-risking mechanism that the country has. For example, if there is a high off-taker risk, which is in some way mitigated by a good liquidity guarantee or any mechanism, so the tool is able to capture that. So the country will not have a low bankability score for that. Just for having a not creditworthy off-taker, the country not necessarily has a low score at the global level, right? And on the second question, I didn't capture your concern on the impact. What specifically?
If no, yeah, we yeah, w- I can take that
Yes.
quickly. Yeah, impact measurement is kind of commonplace now for all investments. You will have some investors that are more driven by that possible impact, but most investors are driven by profits, right? So, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to measure impact of all your activities. We're not capturing that as an indicator, but we can review that. But the impact is usually based on the size of the country as well, right? If you take it in absolute terms, right? But we are covering all countries because we think that all countries should have the same opportunity, right? But within each country, there might be areas that are, or some that will have more impact. We can think about that as an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first version that we are looking for. Sorry for that. Again. So hopefully we can incorporate more and more features to this instrument in line with what you say, that is extremely useful for some of the, of course, investors in the different communities. I think it's something super useful and valuable.
And just to add to that,
Yes.
I think there's a global misperception of what actually the risk is of renewable energy projects in emerging markets. So people tend to think that they are extremely risky, but as a matter of fact, if you are delivering the lowest cost of electricity in a given market, the counterparty risk of your tariff arrangements are not equal to the country risk rating. So you know, and this is something that we are working quite actively with. You know, we have these discussions with our investment committee and also other sponsors, because when you go to business school, which many people have done in this room, they teach you about the capital asset pricing model. And the capital asset pricing model is telling you that, oh, you have a bond from the country, and then you have a risk premium on that bond, and to estimate the cost of capital for that particular project in the country, you have to add the risk premium based on the country's risk rating. And that's nonsense. If you have in offtake arrangements, like I said, you know, where you are delivering the cheapest source of electricity, it's like you're setting up a shop that sells bread in a country, but the price of your bread is a third of the bread that other providers. You know, before they stop eating bread, you know, your bread will be the last one they start buying. So why should you be penalized with a country risk rating for your bread shop? I mean, the challenge here is that the bread shop will be repaid over 20 years. So you need to have stable conditions over those 20 years. But the risk of the project is systematically overestimated by institutional investors and the likes in emerging countries. And actually mature countries have a lot of risk, which is also underestimated. I mean, we're seeing that in the grid, right? The grid is getting congested. The amount of electricity you can sell on the grid is actually decreasing in a lot of mature markets. But that is not captured very well in the risk perception of investors. So I think because of the low penetration emerging markets have today of renewables, they're actually much more attractive from a risk-return perspective than mature markets. And that's a paradox.
Yeah, and I can tell you, even in our experience, by implementing the right instruments to mitigate certain risks that we detected at the very beginning and very fast, as said before, we could bring prices down by a factor of 7 in 6 months. I mean, we brought prices from the $150 to $300 in solar power in Argentina in 2015 to the $50 range in 6 months by just implementing the right instruments at the right time, addressing the right risk. So, talking about credit rating, by bringing AAA guarantees, we shifted the credit rating of the program out of the country, telling the world, the capital market, that you can bring capital to a CCC market in a non-CCC towards AAA program, although the assets are in the market. So in practical terms, we brought IRRs from 15% in expectation from both equity and debt to the 8% range in 6 months. So imagine what that means. line with the impact. I mean, the tool is not yet there, but it should be.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I'm happy to support in that
Yeah,
sense as well.
what Joe was saying, I think that just for the records, and is that this tool can kind of help figure out what is missing and how to get there, right? And that's the value added, how to get to the bankability. We have two more questions. Sorry, I'll pass the mic here and then I'll go there. Okay, thank you, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's on.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on what you just described, why is this asset class not considered a vanilla fixed income?
You mean the renewable energy in the
The
developing
scenario
world?
that was described, the
It can
capital
be,
markets
it can
could
be, but,
see it
but
as a
it's
fixed
not a
income.
plain vanilla because every market has its a different recipe
So
to
I'll
make it
rephrase the
bankable.
question.
So
More, why is it just generally not seen as fixed income in the capital markets?
Well, I think
It could-
some investors actually view it as fixed income, but it's a relatively new asset class. I mean, fixed income has been around for hundreds of years. Renewables have just become bankable in the last 5 to 7 years. So the technology cost has come down dramatically in the recent times, and that's what is creating these unique conditions for renewables, and you haven't seen that before. So I think if with the right structures in place, there's no reason why you shouldn't consider this comparable to fixed income. And a lot of investors are actually already doing that. You see pension funds investing in renewables now, which they haven't done before, and it's becoming more and more and more mainstream.
And I would just add to that, to accelerate the energy transition, it needs to become an asset class. So tools like this can help that. It's a start, but we've got to get that. It has to be its own asset class. That's when we really will execute the transition. Yeah.
yeah, but for doing that, we need to standardize the contractual frameworks. We also need to standardize the risk mitigation in several countries so that it's easily understood and it's kind of more homogeneous across the board. Otherwise, it cannot be considered like a plain vanilla product. The other risk in developing countries is how you get to the pricing. So if you get to the pricing from with a transparent procurement process, there are many risks, especially political risk, that is kind of, and it becomes really the lowest cost of the stack of options. Then you really have something there that's more stable and less risky, and more similar to a loan, like something the institutional investors would be willing to. If it's just based on some negotiations, high priced, it's very vulnerable to being renegotiated down the road. So you cannot put it in, you cannot equalize it with other investments. We have a questions there, sorry. Yeah, let me give you. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a really interesting panel discussion. My name is Zilla. I'm from the Zambia Development Agency, which is the investment promotion authority in Zambia. And so Zambia is currently in the process of reforming the energy sector to open it up for independent power producers and so on. And I really see the value of the tool in supporting this process. So my question really is a practical one, is what are the next steps? How do we begin to work with this tool, and also are there potential funding to support the use of this tool to sort of guide the process? Thank you.
Fantastic. Perhaps Joe can also jump into that. It's a good experience.
Well, quickly, the next steps are to continue to develop the tool and input the data. So what we can do is start working on the ground with your team to kind of get the right numbers for the case of Zambia and start helping you right away. We can do that as a practical example of the usefulness of this. And then around funding, we have to discuss, what resources are, but next year, this project should continue with support. So, yeah, Nicole.
Maybe if I can add, if you don't mind, I'll speak on behalf of both GAP and also Joe, who's lost his voice from Rockefeller. But Rockefeller and GAP, Global Energy Alliance partner, is really very much behind this tool. And in fact, it's already working in Zambia, I understand from Joe too. So it is there, but obviously we must make contact with your development bank and others. But with the GAPs, with Rockefeller and other sort of supporters, doesn't have to be only philanthropy, it can be others. This is not just a philanthropy tool, but to launch it, obviously philanthropy makes sense to initiate it, but this is a tool that is open source out there globally, but particularly for the emerging markets, I think it's something that really is there to sort of accelerate and provide a good service.
And it's very important to know that for the tool to be reliable, we need to not only be based on the preliminary data that we have already collected, but also to count with country experts to provide primary sources of information and to also to conduct surveys in each country to take information from the relevant stakeholders. So to make a real reliable tool, we have a very challenging work ahead, but
The more information we have from the market,
Yeah.
the better the tool it will be.
exactly.
So I think this is key in the collaboration that comes forward.
Okay, one last question for the sake of time. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Andy Herskowitz from ODI. I may have missed this. I walked in a little bit late during the presentation, but is currency risk factored into the tool? Is that something that you look at, because that is one of the biggest risks
Absolutely.
for? Okay.
Yes,
All right.
all the relevant risks are part of the tool.
Okay. All right.
The
That was just-
regulatory, economic,
Okay.
financial, yes.
Great.
And
Thanks.
just to add thing, I mean, I want to be very honest in the approach we have. I mean, we put our experience in this by building all of the things that we built, and of course gathering information from different colleagues that have decades of work in the field. We built this incorporating most of the things that we understand are needed to be measured.
And maybe just to add to your earlier comment, Sebastian, is that, it is an advanced tool, but it's also adapting too. So we've got to start with something. It is very advanced, but as they learn more too and more data comes in, it will mature as well. But for launching it, it is quite advanced, but we acknowledge, or RELP acknowledges that it does need to continue its maturity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to do that, of course.
This is the first step, and something that we think will be useful and is very promising. So with that, I would like to close this panel and this session, and thank you everybody here for being here today, because it's a big effort to be here in Dubai, to be here at this building, specific location within the building. So we all had challenges to get to all our sessions. So it's great that we're all here and that we had this time to discuss. And I thank our panelists. I thank my team here, Joe, who's the creator, mastermind behind, so very, very helpful. The team at the CHIAP that was very collaborative, Ali and Robin from the Rockefeller team that had been very helpful along this journey. And I'm forgetting lots of people that were involved. So thank you so much. We'll make all this information available, and you're open to collaborate as you want. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.